anyone, I think, who is over the age of, I'm going to say like 35 or 40 in this town, has got to know Ken between the Pistons and all the stations, WJR, WCSX till 2013. And I know he's done some things recently. But, yeah, Steve was really crushed. And Steve was supposed to go to, get this, he was supposed to go to Arthur Penhallow's 80th birthday party last night.
Oh.
And Jim Johnson called him, gave him the news, and he said he just took the wind out of him. He could not go.
Oh.
And first of all, he didn't want to take the bad news to the party.
Oh.
He thought, well, maybe they don't know.
Oh, yeah.
How can I go over there and tell them and destroy the party?
Yeah.
So there was a dual reason for the trap door. And honestly, I have no idea what happened. Because I was like, oh, wow, what kind of a party? Well, I don't know because I didn't go. But anyway, Arthur turned 80, ironically, on that day.
We didn't get invited, though? I mean, that's the question that I had in my mind.
Well, it may have been a very small get-together. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I haven't talked to Arthur in a long time. And I'd like to talk to him. It would have been nice to talk to him today. But I told Tony Paul last night, I said, you really should call Steve Kostan or Arthur or Trudy because you work with Ken. Yeah. You did a morning show with Ken at CSX, so you know him certainly better than I do.
I do. I mean, I didn't spend the most time with him, though, which, but
it's not a competition.
I know. In fact, I really feel like I was lucky to spend what time I got with him because, he's just such a great broadcaster and such a decent guy. And it was
he's really
real refreshing thing.
Really a pro.
Time. Yeah.
I mean, just a pro.
And it's just like everyday speech. He was watching, what was that? What's the TV show? The Regis show.
Hi, Regis.
Oh, Regis and Kathy Lee.
And with what's her name? Who,
Hi, Regis.
Husband once, everybody.
Kelly Ripa.
Yeah, Kelly. And he'd just be like, oh, wow, the wind styled Kelly's hair today. It was just like funny little things that were just hilarious the way he saw the world.
He had a way about him, and
I don't know what it is.
I'm really curious to find out about a few things from Steve. One, he left radio to work for the record label for a couple years, and I think that's maybe where he cultivated these artist relationships. Yeah. But I can't.
Bruce Springsteen? Bob Seger?
Yeah. I can't picture a guy with that voice leaving radio. That's just insane because that was so a part of radio at that time. I mean, that was such a gift. If you had a voice like that, you probably had a good job for life. He happened to be one of the guys with a huge voice who sounded really personable. Most guys with those big voices, they sound phony. They sound like pukers.
Right.
He didn't sound like that.
Yeah.
It was really unique, and it was very intimidating when I was listening to tapes of Ken and Lynn and TC and Mike. It really was like, wow, this guy's got a huge set of pipes. And then all those guests, all those friends, it was like, wow, this guy has really, really pulled a nice show together at WRIF. But, fortunately, what WLZ did not do is they did not lock up Mike Clark. They didn't lock up TC. They spent all the money on Ken. And I think that may have hurt him. I mean, not that I want to get all into that, but
he couldn't take his entire show over there. Yeah.
Yeah, he did not get to take his entire show, and that may have been something WLZ didn't want to do. I suspect it was about money. I don't know. But Riff was, although they were dumb to lose Ken at that time, he was at his, I mean, they should have had that thing locked up. But they did, but then they did the smart thing and locked Mike up, who was working at Mishcon. And Mike was calling in and destroying all the phones on the floor, by the way, when he was hanging up as Mr. Stress. People were like, what is going on with all these? Why do we have to fix all these phones all the time? What's going on? It was Mike slamming it down at the end of the bit. And he was doing Bob Boner, and he was doing it primarily from Mishcon, but they signed Mike to a deal, and they signed TC to a deal. And Lynn was supposed to stay, too, which, and now if Lynn had stayed, there would be no Trudy. You would not be sitting here.
No, I'd be in Boston.
You might be still sneaking into the studio in Sacramento.
Yes.
That is one of the best radio stories I've heard in a long time. Steve Kostan, are you there, Steve?
We're here, and we're sad about my buddy Ken Calvert.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, no, I know. You guys were close, and I don't even know where to start. But you know what I wanted to ask you about, because you are a walking encyclopedia of rock and roll, Detroit rock and roll information, concert artist, what have you. The famous picture of Ken with Bruce Springsteen and Bob Seger. Do you know the details behind that?
Yeah, I know some of the details. I know it was taken by Thomas Weschler, and he's been on PBS talking about some of his famous shots in that book, Traveling Man, that he did. And I believe that was a time when Ken was actually doing the CBS Records / Epic gig.
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
100% positive, but I think that's what the deal was. And then I think he brought Bruce out to see Bob at Pine Knob on a night when Bruce was in town. I'm pretty sure that's the deal behind that.
Steve, you are
and
correct.
I know it's Thomas Weschler's picture, and he has the exact story.
Okay, Bruce was playing the Masonic, and which is amazing. Bruce Springsteen at the Masonic.
Oh, my God. Wow.
In 1978, and yeah, Ken brought Bruce to Pine Knob to meet Bob Seger, and he introduced them, and that famous picture was taken. And then my next question was, because this led me down another road, Bob actually joined Bruce on stage at Chrysler Arena in 1980 to sing Thunder Road, which Bruce had already done in the show.
Wow.
Were you at that show, perchance?
No, I was not at that show at Chrysler. He was going to play Detroit like a couple of nights later, and I was on the radio until 10 o'clock at night back in those days.
Oh, yeah.
Probably, might have been WABX at the time, I think.
Okay.
And that was the deal with that, though. No, but everyone thought it was going to happen in Detroit because it happened there, and it did not, of course.
Well, I heard there are a couple of versions of it that are online, and one that actually sounded pretty good. I could really hear Bob. The other one was from another fan. It wasn't nearly as good, but you can clearly hear Bob and Bruce, and it's a pretty damn good version. Have you heard the audio of it?
No, I have not. After all these years, I'm kind of surprised, but I'm sure something's out there somewhere.
I'll send it to you.
Those guys are pretty good at what they do, so I'm sure it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, damn right. So when I was shocked that Ken ever left radio because his voice is just such a perfect radio voice. But when he was with the label, is that where he made his connections with so many artists? Because he did seem to have some nice connections and some good friends, who he was able to interview down the road.
Well, you got to remember when you're working for that label, though, you're only really working with the artists who are on that label.
Oh, true.
So, he's not handling Fleetwood Mac or, the Eagles or all the other things in the other universe that was beyond, that was Big Red, and CBS was a humongous, album company is what I meant to say, record company. But, it probably helped a lot. But, also just being as a program director before he got to go to the record side of things, he was PD at WABX, and WABX was the radio station where you first would get the artist on the radio. It wasn't Riff, and maybe W4 would be playing that game, but ABX is really where you needed to start. They played ball the most with especially unknown bands and just bands that were just coming up. So it was natural for those artists to come by the radio station. Everybody
like
was
who?
young back in those days, which mattered too.
I know. That is so
it was
cool.
just the times,
Who were the bands that were coming by that were unknown at the time? Do you remember?
Just about many bands.
I remember when I came to Riff.
Journey was still pretty much unknown. They didn't know the pre-Steve Perry Journey was kind of more of a fusion rock band, jazz fusion with Neil Schon and the other guys were, and Greg Rowley sang when Steve Perry joined the band. They weren't that big at all. They maybe headlined at Masonic when the Infinity album first came out, and that's when they started to become really commercial. But Billy Squier, Huey Lewis, you can go down the whole list of bands that would be out in that time. Joan Jett wasn't really well known. it would just go on. And later, if it became a bigger hit, it ended up over on the ABC over across the dial at 101.1.
Well, I remember coming in. It was probably 2 weeks. 2 weeks before I started at Riff, I came in with Zip, and we were just kind of putzing around trying to learn the city the best we could. And we knew we were facing Ken Calvert at LLZ, and Jim and George were in the morning there, but Ken was going to move to mornings, and those guys just had Michigan so wired, it seemed. But it was so different. I went in the studio just for kicks that night. It was like 7:30. Joan Jett was in there with her manager, with Ann Carlini.
Whoa.
And I think 2 days before that, John Mellencamp had played live on Arthur's show.
Wow.
So you guys, you did get the artist visits, and the age was perfect because you guys were young, they were young, everything was young. And, I've mentioned many times that I was really envious that we just didn't have the artist connection. Jack White was coming up and so many great artists, and they were never in our studio. We had this, this morning show that certainly reached a lot of people, and there was just no connection there. But you guys, especially with the local artists, because Ken was very tight with Bob Seger and Mitch Ryder and all the Silver Bullet band members, because I remember him having Alto as a guest and a couple of the other guys, and it was like, God, this guy's just got it wired. And he knew Tim Allen and Dave Coulier. He knew the comedy people too. I mean, his tentacles just seemed to go everywhere.
He really had that aspect of, when that wave of comedy kind of came back in a lot with the Comedy Castle, and just, I'm sure it never went anywhere. I mean, my parents had comedy albums too, and but for us, for our generation of that kind of stuff, he was front and center working with Ridley over there, and just bringing up the artists, and of course he'd have his little features, sometimes the 5 o'clock funnies later in life, but. Yeah, you're right. When it was just kind of exploding again with that generation of comedians, Ken was right there.
And he had the sports thing because of the Pistons. And I was trying to remember the punter that he used to have on, too, because I just remember feeling like, God, how am I going to meet all these fucking people? I got to get some Lions. I got to get some. And Fred McLeod helped us get Jerry Ball, which was a total abortion. Jerry had no idea he was on our show. Every Monday morning when we called him, he'd be like, who is this? What is that? Did I agree to do this? Yes. It's the same guys that called you last week.
What a bit.
We never met him because Fred knew him. But, it was just such a disaster. But Ken actually knew these guys, and it was probably from socializing and being out and about. I know there were a couple...
Well, we were around, too. There was, you got to keep going back more, but it really, early 80s with Doug English and the kicker, Eddie Murray, and that group of guys. Those guys are all like my age, because I remember I went to an old-timers thing, once a year they have a game where they salute that, and I think it was around 2010, and everyone was going ape, of course, for the old-timer Barry Sanders, but when Doug English and Eddie Murray and stuff came out, a lot of the people there they got light applause, but a lot of people didn't know them, and I would go, hey, these guys are that old, they're my age, it's like, what the hell? It was just one of those things that,
was it Doug?
But he knew them a lot, even back then, he was definitely a big Lions fan / booster groupie, back around the late 70s as well,
No,
we didn't know it was going to be another 50-year, 40-year drought at that point either.
His social graces, obviously, his personality enabled him to become friends with all these people, especially Tim Allen and the comedians. I remember meeting Bob Saget and Dave Coulier. Yeah, out at the Metro Music Cafe, and they were putting their hands in the cement, and it was really awkward meeting them because I asked them, like, hey, I'd love to get you on the show, and you could tell, like, oh, well, gee,
Calvert's people.
Yeah, they were Calvert's guys, and it took a long time to get through. I don't think we had Tim Allen on the show, honestly, until Ken was maybe even off radio. That's how tight he was with Tim Allen.
Well, yeah, he had to, he was out of state that weekend. He was in Florida. That's the official clause, Ken has to be off radio for years and be not in the state at the time. So.
Yeah, no, it was
The
really.
stars lined up well. Consider yourself lucky.
Yeah, I did. I was like, we finally got to talk to Tim Allen, a local guy, and Jeff Daniels. We eventually got to meet too. But Ken had Jeff Daniels on too when we were paying attention to what's Calvert doing today. He's got Jeff Daniels on. Damn it, he's got Eddie Murray.
Well, he could do a lot of the. Some of the impressions too, and his buddy Al April, Fiat, fix it again, Tony. That the guy who had all those acronyms. That was the word for that for the cars. Found on road dead. Fiat, fix it again, Tony. He had that whole bit. He had I don't remember what Oldsmobile was, but he had one for it. Wow. And I think I played golf with those two knuckleheads once. He was just. Ken was fun. We golfed a few times. He made some cool stuff. He got me and Tom Hamilton on at Wabeek Country Club. It was the only day he was in town, and they had an outing scheduled for later, but it wasn't going to start till about noon or something. Uh-huh. So he was able to. We were able to weasel out onto the golf course real early. And squeeze in about 12 holes before we had to make room for the event. Ken set that up. So that was kind of nice of him. He was always doing stuff like that.
No, you guys had such connections to the artists. Like Tom Hamilton of Aerosmith. To play golf with him. How fucking cool is that?
Oh my God.
I remember. As we got to know guys from our era, like D-Mac. We got to have D-Mac at our golf outings. That was such a big deal to me. Like, wow, this is so cool. The guy scored the winning goal in the winning game in the Stanley Cup Finals, but it just seemed like, especially with the artists, there was so much more of that when you guys were, in the 70s and the 80s coming up before it got so corporate. In fact, I remember, Steve, you and I went to see Ron Wood, and I think, didn't Ron Wood get us the tickets to see him at the Ritz?
Really?
I think you had a connection with Ron Wood.
Something like that. It was, his guitar tech was from around here.
Okay.
Older guy that worked for other bands, and then he got hooked up with John with Woody in '75. I think he was, or maybe even before. Yeah, that's when I met the guy. But that was that show over at the Ritz.
Yeah.
That evening, that was the slide on this tour. That was a lot of fun. But
I can't believe you remember the name of that tour.
One of his assignments, because it's more about Ken here. He left the world of radio. The next time I saw him was he was on the tour with that band called the New Barbarians. That was that Keith Richards, Ronnie Wood project where they put together a band with Stanley Clark on bass, and Bobby Keys, the sax player, came out with him. And then there's this big group shot of a bunch of us, and there's Ken, over on the far left, and he's actually the record guy. It was kind of doing what the record guy does, kind of herding the cats. That's the air talent musicians, to get them together to take a picture, and basically, introducing everybody and just kind of glad handing the room. And
hey, Steve,
he was,
about what
he was
year?
good at that too.
About what year was that picture taken with the New Barbarians?
1979.
79. I did not even know that Keith Richards toured with a band before the Expensive Winos. I thought that was his only outing.
No, this is the New Barbarians. I'm looking at it right now. Here's Keith, Ronnie Wood, Stanley Clark on bass. There's Ian McLaughlin, little Ian Mack,
Ian,
the keyboard player.
From Faces.
Bobby Keys, and this other Rebop, I believe, was a percussionist, kind of a Jamaican guy. He's in this picture. I'm just naming. I'm looking at the picture right now.
Man, that's like a super group. That's a hell of a group.
And then there's Ken Calvert. Rick Waldecker was a disc jockey at the time at WD4. Yours truly, and then Mark McEwen, who went on to great worldwide broadcasting fame at CBS.
Absolutely.
And Karen Savelli, Mark Woodison, or Mark Westcott, and Lynn Woodison, and along with Stanley Clark, and that completes that picture. I should take a little shot of it and send it over to you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd love to see that. So that must have been a great show.
It was good. They jammed a lot. They weren't super tight, but it was fun. It was just kind of plus that's the first time I got to meet, Keith Richards. So we'll take that any day of the week.
Hell yeah. I just saw Keith on Willie Nelson's 90th birthday party on CBS. Keith came out at the very end and did 2 songs with Willie, and he sounded great. Believe it or not.
I know, and that's the irony of all this stuff that's going on today. We're remembering our good buddy Ken, 72 years old, the same week that Keith Richards, Arthur Penhallow turned 80, and Willie Nelson turns 90. Go figure.
I know. Have you talked to Arthur?
I have not. I was headed out to a little thing that he was going to have, a little 80th thing out in the Brighton area. And
you got gut
just when I was about to hop in the shower, 30 minutes to go, we're out of here, and I'm leaving. One of those things. I make the announcement to the house, and then Johnson calls me, and he doesn't call me very often at all. Not like Ken and I were pretty much phone tag buddies, because a lot of it had to do with the shift. I was on it in the evening, so I never knew Jim as well as I knew Ken. But Johnson called at about 5 o'clock and gave me the news, and that was very deflating, to say the least.
No, I don't know how you go to a party after finding that out. And going back.
Not that thing. It was just too. It just like, what, huh? And then, my wife. It was upsetting. We hung out with those guys a lot and went to a couple of those trips down to Mexico, and they had Calvert doing the old show from Puerto Vallarta. I kind of, weaseled in on that a few times. And that's what it was all about. It was kind of, the right group of people was going down there anyways. The price is right, and,
hey, yeah.
Built-in fun. It was, I didn't even have to hang with him, Ken the whole time. He had a show to do. I could easily find other things.
You had the best gig of all. Yeah, what a great gig. And then, I feel bad I haven't even mentioned Ann Calvert, Ken's wife. Who was she his high school sweetheart?
Mm-hmm.
Marion?
Yeah, those two knew each other in high school, and somewhere after that they kind of went their separate ways, but then ended up back together, after one marriage that didn't take each, I believe.
Uh-huh.
And then, kind of reconnected, and they got married. They probably, I bet it was 40 years this August.
Wow.
Now that I think about it, I think it was around 83 when they got married.
Well,
yeah.
And you guys I don't know if at that time had the sort of the dream lineup at WRIF been set up? Had it taken hold at that point in '83? What was that lineup?
That whole ABC O&O dream team. It was basically JJ and the Morning Crew in the morning, KC on middays, followed by Arthur P in the afternoons naturally, and me at night, and Karen was on after me at 10 to 2 at night, and overnight was Carl Coffey.
Oh, Carl Coffey and overnight. Holy shit.
That's what you call depth.
Yeah.
Who were Steve, do you remember
who you call depth of the lineup, It was, and then the weekend guy, it was,
I was going to ask you.
A lot of talent for a long time here, and it was well concentrated over there. We just crush everything else.
Do you happen to remember what the weekend talent was at that time? I know it's a ridiculous question, but you remember ridiculous things.
Well, I know one of them was Phil. Also we worked 6 days a week then. There was.
Oh my God!
That was a big breakthrough.
Woo!
We didn't have Sean Fain, to be blocking for us so we could run through that hole in the line of scrimmage. So we all worked 6 days, but one of the guys was Phil Foreman, and
was Walt Fredrickson there yet?
I can't remember.
Walt Fredrickson?
I'm sorry?
Walt Fredrickson?
Yeah. Walt must have been in the mix as well.
Great guy.
And there was a few other ones, but that thing. Yeah, we used to work 6 days a week, and then we worked on holidays too. So it was Thanksgiving. Around 5 o'clock, I had to head on into work.
Wow. I remember doing the same thing, except I was doing it on an AM station in Roanoke, Virginia.
God.
Oh God, dreadful. And I remember we gave away batteries on Christmas Day, and people were ringing the fucking buzzer my whole fucking shift. It was horrible.
You're handing out
Yeah.
batteries.
Yes, it was
my
such
God.
bullshit.
But that's why I don't remember the weekend thing. I think didn't even change till about '86 or something like that.
Okay.
There was it was kind of just a given. But yeah, the holidays too. I was telling you that would be like Christmas. I'd do my shift and then.
I remember. Did it too. 85, 86,
and that kind of
87,
stuff.
88. Even in Charlotte, I was working 6 days a week. Not until I got to morning show in Boston was I doing 5
As
days.
if anybody was really weird listening to nighttime radio on Thanksgiving night,
I know.
I mean, that was kind of. We did a litmus test by accident when I dropped an F-bomb Thanksgiving night of 1981, and I was still kind of new at the riff at the time. And we were talking about this big promotion. We're going to have this concert because the Stones were coming to town, like within about a week later at the Silverdome, 2 big shows. So we're having this night at the center stage, and we're going to have, just like we did with the so-and-so before, we're going to have the big old fucking screen out there, and it's going to be a great night, loudest thing about. And I realized I had said that, and I still had half a page of copy to go, and I just kept reading. And so that'll be I-275 and Ford Road, blah, 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 and I kept going through the whole thing. Of course, now sweating bullets. It's getting hotter and hotter in the room before I complete the read. And I get off, and I close the mic, and nothing.
No phones
happened.
rang.
About 3 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes later, somebody called, and I picked it up, and the guy goes, "Did that announcer say fucking on the radio?"
No.
I didn't hear anything, and I just kind of no, boom, and that was it. Just one call the whole time, and it's like, thank God nobody was listening. That was the best time. If it's going to happen, that was the night to do it. Thanksgiving night, about 8 p.m. ish. I think everyone was watching the Dallas Cowboys at that point.
So, Steve, you moved from nights, though, when Ken had his next run at Riff, he built that morning show with Lynn and TC and Mike Clark, and really had a great morning show, became #1, and that's what's launched him into that great deal he had at WLLZ. But you followed Ken. You moved up to middays, and so you probably did a lot of crossovers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All the time. That was part of the thing. And that was great, too, because that's how I met Soupy Sales. Because the guests who would be kind of finishing up would be there, and you'd be kind of having a natural overlap. And I think for a while I was actually doing the music director thing. So I'd be there down the hall maybe, earlier than if I just came in to be on the air at 10. I think I did a little bit of that too. So yeah, it was always, coming in right after those guys, and it was good to kind of catch up on all the news of the day or having listened on the way in. It's always fun. It was fun coming in after you guys, and because you'd listen to it and you'd be kind of mentally wanting to talk back to the radio a little bit anyways.
Sure.
And then 15 minutes later I got to do it, and Trudy's got the great laugh, so it makes me sound funny even when I'm not.
No, it was actually, I love when you were following us. It was fun crossing over. Your encyclopedic knowledge of Detroit and rock and roll is just phenomenal. It's unmatched, and it should be, it ought to be utilized somewhere. At least we're getting something out of you today, for Christ's sake. But no, I love
the one thing is it just helped to be in the middle of all that stuff when it was happening.
Yeah.
I was lucky, but guess you had to be there. It's not really that encyclopedic attic or whatever.
Yeah, you were there.
If you're, just kind of in and you remember, oh yeah, that was that party at Punch Andrews. Punch Andrews used to have these great annual Christmas parties where he would invite, of course, people from all of the radio stations. It was just kind of a, Punch Makes Nice with rock radio thing.
Sure,
and,
why not?
They'd have bands playing stuff, and I like places like maybe the Clubhouse at one condo complex he had, so there was enough for a live band, and, we'd go till about 4 o'clock in the morning, things like that. That was always kind of a real kind of epicenter, kind of focal point. It was really cool to be, cool enough to be invited to that. Just
Yeah,
stuff
Bob
that-
Seger's manager. Hell yeah. It's probably a hellacious Christmas party. But, I wanted to.
Yeah, it was just like it started off. I think it originally probably started at Punch's house at one point, and then in the mid '70s it kind of got a little bigger, and it was a lot of fun. He was good for the whole area too. And Ken was very tight with Punch for a long time, and Ken always kind of lived in Birmingham, and Punch had the house in Birmingham, the office, and it just was something that was always there. And Thomas Weschler, the photographer, was part of that scene, and everybody kind of knew people a little bit. Those guys were a little bit older than me, but it was fun to kind of draft along behind them, and keep your mouth shut, and then you might learn something, kid.
And then in the later '80s, when Ken and Lynn and Mike and them, do you recall? Because I believe Jim and George were at Wheels, and Chapin and Bean were at CSX, and I think Ken was third of the three, but he did overtake both of them by '91 when he took the deal at Wheels, and we came in when Ken vacated. But do you remember that the build up of that show and how it eventually did take over? Was it something that was just obviously going to happen, or was it a big fight, a big radio battle? Because
It's
battles
never
were big.
obvious. Basically, when he first left, when JJ and George left, for some reason, they didn't get any traction for 3 books.
Really?
Basically the winter, spring, summer, it wasn't really, they were kind of spinning their wheels, and Calvert was holding them off mornings with his partner was Joe Napodi at the time.
Oh, who's a comedian? Yeah, right.
And then what happened in the fall of that year, Nugent came on and did a week for the morning show, either with those guys or when they were on vacation. I can't remember, but it was a week of Nugent, and that was like the first one, and it really just
blew up.
Really lit a fire. It was just different, and it was huge, and but when he left, the audience kind of stayed. It almost gave him like a brighter spotlight, and he was able to capitalize that. I'm talking about Johnson now over there on the other side of the dial. That Nugent thing really gave him the pop, and then they were, then they started winning after that. It was weird though. I remember because I was talking to Fred Jacobs about that, at the time.
Yeah, I was thinking when you said Nugent, I was thinking WRIF, obviously, but Nugent started doing that week at WLLZ.
Because that's where he met Jermaine.
Jim and George. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Correct. Wow.
So then,
that's.
I know things.
But
I know.
basically the split between Ken and Joe Napodi and Lynn moving into the show, that must have made it. I mean, they had nice chemistry together. Ken and Lynn really did.
Well, yeah, it got more into what was happening too. I think with the audience as we got older too. It was just kind of it entered a different realm, and it was something that we all could relate to, and it just became more of a on the radio universal example of nagging and just relationships in general. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, he's terribly missed. I mean, so many great comments and so many nice tweets. And when you have Isaiah Thomas tweeting about you and Bob Seger, I mean, that's really, really nice. And I think Ann Calvert mentioned how good she felt that all these people were speaking up, and that's really nice too. Anything that can help her at this horrible, horrible time, because it was not. Steve, his death was unexpected. He was not like he was seriously ill, correct?
Correct. He had gone in. Well, we had talked, like I said, a bunch of, more kind of a flurry of talking more often because of JJ's thing. Mm-hmm. He was, like I said, he was on before me, and then, okay, now how was that? And I talked to him. He talked to me every day, about how that whole thing was going down. But no, they had, he went in for a few days. I think my impression was that they had gotten his meds adjusted or got into his levels of whatever levels they were monitoring to an acceptable thing, and they let him go. And then about a week later, he passed away.
Wow.
And I don't know, that's all I know at this point.
Yeah. No,
But,
I knew he had his health battles. He was struggling. Well, when you were with him, Trudy, was it his back that was really bad?
Yeah, his back, and there was a little skin cancer. I remember he would be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's where he had. He was a stylish dude too. That was a cool thing about him too. He was. He's actually had a sense of style and everything too. He had everything.
But he was having certainly some
was.
medical problems. So
You know what? He stayed up during it
definitely
all.
some ongoing things, but nothing that was had presented itself, or at that point, you thought it was kind of back in the rearview mirror at this point.
Sure.
'Cause, he just kind of gotten out of there, and boy, it leaves a big hole. It's really. It's just really sad on many levels.
I'm glad you guys were talking a lot here lately. At least there's that. I mean, it really does help. I just can't stand it when somebody goes and I'm like, God damn it, why didn't I call that person? Because that does happen every now and again. So
he tried to make me laugh just earlier in the week. On Monday, there was a voicemail here at about 5:00. And basically, he sounded kind of raspy. He goes, still trying to connect. We had done a little phone tag in and out of it, but coming back. And oh yes, I will be. I will be back. And my pipes. Oh yes, they will be back. My pipes. They will be mine. Oh yes, they will be mine. Party on, Stevie. Party on, Calv. And then he hung up. So he channeled Wayne Campbell right there. That one was always making with the funny stuff. Even right at the end there, he still had enough to muster a character.
Yeah.
No, that's
God
great.
bless him.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for sharing with us. It's so much fun to talk about those days and to honor Ken too. And I really appreciate it. It gave us a chance to talk too. I mean, there's nothing good about Ken Calvert's passing, but it is. I'm just glad I picked up the phone and called you, and we got to do this. So we'll have to do it again.
Sounds like a deal. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Steve. It was great. Really appreciate it.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye, Steve.
Be well.
Bye.
All right, Steve Kostan.